All right, tabletop enthusiasts, how do you jump into an already established wargaming system or tabletop game? That's what we're going to do and explore in this vlog, building that checklist. And hopefully, unlike something that I am incapable of doing, exercising some impulse control. Now, I'm going to be talking about passionately and sharing God Tier as an example, because this is a game that I recently jumped into. I'm very passionate about, and it serves as a perfect example given how the game was released, how the community is navigating it, and how it is currently being supported with new releases. So think of it as part sales pitch, but more as a template that you can utilize to understand other systems. So for whatever reason, the system has captured your attention. Maybe it's the models, the narrative, the community, usually a mix of all three. And you say, I'm all in. This is a game that I want to play. And what we always see is the idea of a core system. Now, the core system might be a starter set. In the case of God Tier, there are two starter sets. They give you two different factions each, but they give you boards, dice, token, rules, and missions. So the idea is you buy that starter set and you have everything you need to learn the game and start playing scenarios. We see this like X-Wing miniatures. We see this even in games like Warhammer 40,000. There are box sets that will introduce you to the game and the core rules and other aspects. So whatever that system is going to be, there's going to be some sort of core buy-in. And they vary back and forth. Is it just a teaser starter set, or is it something that really gives you everything you need to play in one box? Jumping into a system, you're going to need that core experience. That's just the starting point. Then from there, we see adding on components, factions, armies, war bands. And now this is where it becomes challenging, because based on the resources and based on your understanding of the game, it is not always possible or realistic or desired to jump in and kind of pick up everything at once. Because this brings up the question twofold. If you go out and buy every faction or buy a little bit of everything, there are going to be pieces that don't fit your player personality. We all approach wargaming differently with how we want to win. So you don't want to buy models that you're not going to use. But secondary, you might become overwhelmed and say, well, I've just got all this stuff. Where do I even go from this point of view? Where do I even go from this perspective? So this recommendation that you acquire focused, and then after you're focused, you build out from there. Okay, jumping into God Tier. So I was aware this is a skirmish-based game where literally champions are infused with the tiers of the gods, and they fight over God tiers on the surface, on the planet, on different terrains. And you have a champion along with followers. So essentially it's a warband skirmish-based game with a lot of really, really unique mechanics. And we'll just put it at that. On a side note, if you are interested in God Tier, I have posted up to my YouTube channel here under the God Tier playlist, rules analysis, factions, and why I'm very passionate about this game and the community. But it was a Kickstarter originally. I saw the Kickstarter. I didn't become involved in it because I was committed to some other Kickstarters, and I was trying to exercise some impulse control, and I knew it was going to go to retail. The primary difference, of course, a few little extras, but the difference between metal miniatures and kind of plastic injected molded miniatures. Normally, I like metal miniatures because I'm kind of old school on that, but it depends on the scale. The scale of the God Tier champions is heroic scale. They're pretty big. And the sculpts are very, very detailed and unique. So I really didn't want to fight. My Nurgle old school metal demon prince, my man's been like pinned and repinned so many times, and he falls apart. And even my excellent friend, brother Captain James, the ultimate pinning master for 40K, like he's worked on this thing back in the day. So I wanted to avoid like multi-point, multi-piece, large, heavy models. So I'm like, I'll wait to see how it rolls out into retail. So it comes out at retail, and that's when I jump in. I jumped in with the two starter sets and the core war bands. Now, I had a chance to see the rules. I had a chance to play a couple of the games on a friend that had the Kickstarter. So as I was waiting for retail, I knew I was all in. I wanted to acquire all the warbands. So I broke that rule, didn't exercise impulse control, and purchased all of them. Now at this point, as they roll out 2 to 3 or 4 warbands a year, it's easy to acquire and stay on top. So that was the rollout jumping into that. If someone was getting involved in God Tier now, what I would recommend, right, looking at an attack plan, so to speak, purchasing one of the cores. Now, the advantage we have, of course, YouTube, blogs, not only an unboxing, but to give you an idea, since they're different warbands in each starting set, to get a feel of the synergy, to get a feel of how they play. I would pick up both of those starter sets as a literal starting point, because you're going to get 4 warbands to buy in. You're going to get double the set of dice and tokens, and you're going to get 2 different playboards, 2 different battle maps to fight on. That as a core experience. Now we jump into the fact that there are multiple warbands, dozens and dozens of warbands, and they're all cool and they're all fantastic. This is where jumping into it as a template, you have to do a little research, because you might be in a position where you say, look, I am all in. I'm going to go all in. Or maybe you're able to pick up a Kickstarter and get it from that perspective, or switch and trade. But realistically, to look at the different warbands and factions and how they play, if you're jumping into a system that is established and has multiple factions, doing that research, focusing, what do I want to play? What intrigues me? What rules excite me? What powers and abilities excite me? And make that your core experience, because that's going to do twofold. It's going to get you in the game and playing with stuff that you enjoy. So it's going to keep that passion, keep that narrative going. But at the same time, it's going to give you enough diversity to try out different warbands and different combos. It's going to keep you going. At that point, once you have your core, and if we're using God Tier as a model, you can fight 1-to-1, 1 warband to 1, 2-to-2, or 3-to-3. Technically, there's no cap. I mean, we played 6-on-6 by having a big board and playing with multiple people. I like to take the rules. My number one rule as a wargamer, everyone has a place at my table. So if I've set up a game to play and you come up and you're like, hey, that looks pretty cool. Can I try it out? Or you have an interest. Let's play. Let's do it. Here, take half my army. Or, well, the rules only say you can have 2 players. Here, let's put down a 3rd faction. Let's see what happens. The hell with the rules. Like, player experience and community comes first. So I played many God Tier games where we've had like 6 warbands, 6 players versus 6. And it's just absolutely crazy. You know, we put 2 boards together and especially replicate 2 missions across the whole board. But nothing stops you from moving over onto another board to play. But from that point moving forward, I say that once you have your core, now you can begin to expand out on the other things that intrigue you. They might be a part of your player personality, or you might say at some point I'll get to them, with the focus being, depending on the system, of eventually acquiring everything. And then once you're at that point, not only can you support bigger games, but you also, it's easier to keep up with new releases because they're not as overwhelming. And on a side note, using God Tier as an example, the reason why I have all the factions is I enjoy playing all of them and the combos. It's a fantastic system. But there are some factions that I play less because the play style is different and it's not really my play style. But by having all of them in my stable, what this means is that when I play with my friends, I can put them first. So if you're like, look, I want to play Rangosh, there's absolutely. If I was sitting there saying, well, you know, I was going to bring him to the table, it's good. You play him. I'll pick somebody else. I have enough where I can say, look, you guys pick your stuff first and figure out what you want to play. And I can play so we don't have those duplicates. We don't have to worry about that. So there are advantages to planning and figuring out and acquiring beyond your player personality. But in terms of an attack list, so to speak, that is how I would start, explore, and build that checklist to jumping into an already established game so it's not so overwhelming.